Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers for Blade Runner 2049, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd suggest seeing it, then coming back and watching the video afterwards. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get going. So I saw Blade Runner 2049 the week it came out, and then I watched it a second time, and initially my thoughts on it were fairly positive. I thought it was a very good film, very well acted, it's very intriguing, the story's great, and it's visually one of the most stunning movies I've seen all year. And seeing it a second time, my opinion on it kind of improved. One thing I was very vague about in my initial review of the film was the character of Kate, played by Ryan Gosling. And let's get the big reveal about his character out of the way now. Yes, he is a replicant. There's pretty much no room for debate or ambiguity about that whatsoever, quite frankly. He's a new Blade Runner that's been tasked with hunting down all these older replicants from before the blackouts, basically like a lot of the old Nexus 6 replicants from the original Blade Runner. He's very much a product of this new system, and he believes he's different from these other replicants, but really, there's nothing separating him from somebody like Dave Bautista's Sapper Morton, whom he kills about 5 minutes into the film. The only thing that really separates him from them is that he's a part of the new system and they're not. He's kind of a hypocrite if you look at it from a certain point of view. There's that scene where he talks to the chief of police, played by Robin Wright, and she tasks him with hunting down the replicant child and killing him, or her. And he says he's never killed anybody with a soul before. When we first see Kay in the film, he seems like this very cool, very stoic, very emotionally detached replicant. Very reminiscent of the roles that Gosling tends to get typecast as. He doesn't seem particularly hesitant about putting down other replicants, and he doesn't really show much remorse for what he does. But his principles and his beliefs are very much challenged throughout the movie. Whenever he comes across Rachel and he's tasked with hunting down her child, you begin to see that stoic and emotionless side to him unravel, and you begin to see that underneath that cool exterior, he's a lonely character looking for a purpose. He's not treated with much respect among the other officers, and it seems like he's disliked among the other replicants as well. So whenever he begins to suspect that he might be the child that he's looking for, the idea does begin to intrigue him. He seems very interested in this idea. It gives him the sense of purpose and importance that he's been looking for all this time. One aspect of the film that I was very intrigued by when I first saw the film, and even now I'm still very fascinated by, is the relationship between Kay and his virtual girlfriend Joy, played by Ana de Armas. On the surface, she seems to be this very devoting and loving girlfriend to Kay, and you can kind of tell that he's smitten with her too. But there's a lot of obstacles that keep their relationship from being truly meaningful. He can't physically touch her, and she doesn't technically exist. But at the same time, you're never really sure whether her feelings for Kay are genuine, or whether it's all just part of her programming. The way she talks to Kay in her interactions with him, whenever he's knocked out or unconscious, she freaks out and worries quite hysterically. And that scene where she gets the prostitute played by Mackenzie Davis to come in and stand in for her during sex, all of those could be used to support the theory that she is genuinely in love with Kay. But at the same time, a lot of her dialogue is made up of sweet nothings and empty cliches, and she's advertised as providing everything you want to see and hear. Again, whenever Kay begins to believe that he might be human, she doesn't raise any opposition to it. She's like, yeah, you are human, you're special, you know, that sort of thing. Again, a lot of this could be used to support the theory that everything she says is just part of her programming. Hell, I'm personally a little unsure as to which theory I agree with myself. Part of me really wants to believe the theory that Joy is genuinely in love with Kay, because Gosling and de Armas are just so good together, they have such great chemistry, and the romantic scenes between them are genuinely beautiful. But then the other part of me is just saying, oh, all of that lovey-dovey shit is just part of her programming. Her feelings for Kay are completely artificial, and she's just telling him what he wants to see and hear. I definitely think this is something that could cause just as much debate as the whole is Deckard a replicant theory from the original Blade Runner. And I just love that sequence near the end where Kay is walking in the rain and he sees an advertisement for Joy, largely because Gosling's performance in that scene is just incredible. He doesn't say anything, but you can really tell he's just thinking it won't be the same. You can really feel the heartbreak that the character is going through as he looks at this advertisement for Joy. Kay as a character is very different from how Deckard was portrayed in the original. For one, he's actually a complete badass. If you go back and watch the original Blade Runner, you'll find that Deckard is fairly useless throughout the movie. Everybody talks about how legendary he is as a Blade Runner, but if that's the case, he really doesn't show it in the film. He seems like somebody who's long past his prime. He gets his ass handed to him by all 4 replicants he's tasked with killing, and he's only able to directly retire 2 of them. By contrast, Kay is one tough cookie. He can take one hell of a beat, and he's even able to put down Dave Bautista quite quickly in the opening scenes of the film. But at the same time, I also like that he sustains injuries throughout the film, and those injuries don't heal instantly. There's a lot of scenes where he walks around bruised and battered, and you can tell that the effects of his journey do affect him. I also really like and appreciate a lot of the small touches, like whenever he's trying to heal himself in the bathroom, he's trying to put together all these stitches. Again, it adds a lot of vulnerability to the character. In fact, I would go as far as saying he's a lot more in common with one of the movie's main antagonists, Sylvia Hoek's Love. She's a replicant enforcer for Jared Leto's Neander Wallace, and she's a very strong, very vicious replicant, very reminiscent of Preston Zora from the original film. So sort of like if you combine those two characters into one, ostensibly. She's similar to Kay in the sense that she's a replicant that's just doing her job. But as their search for the child goes on, their motivations become a lot more personal. There's also a couple of hints that she's grown beyond her programming too. There's a couple of moments where she reacts to Wallace's cruelty and you can tell it doesn't really sit well with her, like she's crying in one scene. And you're never really sure whether she's doing it for her creator or for herself. There's a lot of ambiguity to the character, I would say. Like whenever she kills Kay's superior, she flat out states that she's going to tell Wallace that she did it in self-defense. Speaking of Wallace, he's a very mysterious and intriguing character. He's constantly shrouded in mystery, he's in the shadows in every scene, and he's this very creepy and unsettling presence every time he's on screen. Leto really makes a strong impression in the role. I don't think I give him enough credit for that when I first reviewed the film. He's only in 2 scenes, but he really makes the most of whatever screen time he has. He's the one that's created all these new, more obedient, subservient replicants, and he's been credited as saving the universe after the blackouts. He's very much the sequel to Tyrell, but whereas Tyrell was somewhat ambivalent, not really an outright antagonist, Wallace has a lot of sinister things going on. He wants to find the child so that he can use it to try and create more replicants so that he can expand his workforce and expand his empire. In a way, he thinks he's doing it to try and save humanity, but at this point humanity is very much long past saving. He's basically a god that's abusing his power. He's very much like Geppetto with a god complex. If Kay or Batty in these movies is Pinocchio, then he, or Tyrell, is basically a more sinister version of Geppetto. In his very first scene, he examines this new replicant that he's created, and then he kills her because he can. And I have to admit, I wasn't really sure about this scene. I'm still not very sure about this scene. I still think it's a little bit gratuitous. I guess it's meant to symbolise that he can basically create life and take it away just as easily. But it still felt a little bit overdone to me. There's a lot of god imagery associated with him. His headquarters is basically like a beautiful and idyllic paradise, almost like heaven. Though to be fair, if I created robots like the ones in Blade Runner, I'd probably want to live like a god too. It's probably not all that much of a surprise that Deckard doesn't actually appear until well over an hour and a half into the movie. In fact, when I first saw the movie and we got to that scene, I was actually quite surprised because I thought the movie we were only at the hour mark, but I really liked the build up to his initial appearance. It's very suspenseful and very unnerving, and the loud booming music really sends shivers down your spine. I can't quite replicate it, and it probably sounds a lot better on a cinema screen, but take my word for it, it really does shock you, it really makes you jump. It's very reminiscent of the climax of the original film where Deckard is searching for Batty in the house. It's got a similar vibe to it, and I thought it was a nice little callback to the original. The ensuing fight between Kay and Deckard is quite enjoyable, albeit a little unexpected. It really does catch you by surprise and goes on maybe a little longer than it should. I also really like the portrayal of Deckard in this film. He's a much older and more battered man who's given up everything to protect his child, and he's lost everything as a result. And even though I did say there's a lot of differences between him and Kay, there are also a couple of comparisons that could be made, because you could compare that scene where Kay meets Joy in the Rain with the scene where he meets a recreation of Rachel, but he rejects it because she had green eyes, and he kind of realises it won't be the same. I think that's one of the main themes of the movie. We always yearn for the past, we yearn to go back to a simpler time, but when we're given the chance we realise it probably won't be the same. It's very much trying to deconstruct that nostalgic obsession we all have in our films at the moment. And although initially it seems like Kay is going to be the child of Deckard and Rachel, that doesn't actually turn out to be the case. It turns out that the child is actually Dr. Anna Stelline, who recreates memories for replicants. And this is something I was a little unsure of whenever I first saw the film. I'm still a little unsure about it at the time of making this video. I'm glad that they didn't go down the direction and made Kay Deckard's son, because I thought that would have been a little too predictable. But I like the way that they foreshadow that reveal. Like whenever Kay goes to her earlier on, and looks at that memory he has of him hiding the horse from bullies, and you see her react to it quite tearfully, it's sort of a subtle hint at the inevitable reveal. And even though Kay does die at the end of the film, it is something of a happy ending for him, because he dies having reunited Deckard with his long-lost daughter. It gives him a sense of purpose that he's been looking for, and it is something of a satisfying conclusion to the film. I was very vague about some of my issues with the film when I first reviewed it, but one issue I had when I first saw it, and that I still have, is that some of the dialogue can be a little bit heavy-handed in places. I get that the replicants are supposed to be an allegory for slavery, and the tense relationship between them and humans is very much comparable to the civil rights movement, race relations and all that sort of thing. And for the most part, I feel that allegory works very well. It's delivered very effectively, especially with how the police are just there to try and uphold the divide between humans and replicants. It's just that there are a couple of lines that are a little bit on the nose. Like when Robin Wright talks about how there's a wall between humans and replicants, and if you tell either side there's no wall, you got a war. But the biggest casualty of that, I think, is Jared Leto. A lot of his dialogue just consists of metaphors that could really come across as very risible and thuddingly obvious and preachy. But Leto makes the dialogue work. His creepy monotone delivery along with the filmmaking really do help to make up for the on-the-nose writing in places. This is something I didn't really talk about in my initial review on the film, but I do get the feeling that the movie is trying to set up future sequels. Quite late into the film, after Kay's been knocked out and Deckard's been kidnapped by Wallace, he meets this group of replicants that help to hide Rachel's baby. They're a resistance movement that are hoping to use the idea that replicants can conceive children in order to gain support for their cause. However, that conflict is largely carried out in the background, and it's never really focused on outside of that one scene. And I get the feeling that the filmmakers were hoping to explore this idea further in a future installment. Though given the movie's box office performance, chances of that happening aren't exactly great. Though to be fair, the original Blade Runner wasn't a big hit when it first came out, and plenty of movies have still gotten sequels despite generally poor domestic box office performances. So anything's possible, I suppose. But hey, even if a sequel doesn't happen, this movie still works very well as a standalone film that manages to escape the shadow of the original Blade Runner. So if you've seen Blade Runner 2049, I hope you have, what did you think about it? I'm curious to know whether you liked it or didn't like it, because I certainly enjoyed it. Not a perfect film by any means, the dialogue can be a little bit preachy at times, and the film is a bit long at nearly 3 hours. But personally, I never noticed the length. I thought it breezed by very quickly. But it's still a great film regardless. And it's a towering achievement that stands as one of the year's best films. Hell, I think it actually is even better on a second viewing. I'll keep the score at an 8 out of 10 for the moment, but you never know, this score could increase in the future. I hope you check out my first impressions review on the original Blade Runner because, surprise surprise, up until this movie came out I hadn't actually seen it yet. And just when you thought I was done with Blade Runner, I'll have another video coming your way soon where I take a look at all the different cuts of Blade Runner, including the theatrical version, the international version, the director's cut, the final cut, and even the work print version. Take a look through all the different versions, compare and contrast them, and ultimately decide which version is the definitive version. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with more content in the future, and in the meantime, feel free to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. If there's anything I can do to improve my presentation, let me know. I can also be found by Facebook, Twitter, email and Instagram, and until next time, I'm Danny Quinn, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.